Hey guys, I just wanted to interject here before the video starts. I wanted to thank any of you that are returning viewers from the last video that I posted. It has done far better than I expected and even pushed the channel past 25 subscribers. I plan to do a variety of content pertaining to Overwatch on this channel, but I'm also going to make more National Geographic videos in the future, so stick around. Thank you to everyone that has supported the channel up to this point, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Alright, here we go again. Blizzard is back at it with another age controversy. Although this time it's not what you think. Recently, on their website, Blizzard has released all of the ages for every Overwatch hero that's currently in the game, as well as their birth dates. Shout out to my man who is getting a birth date later on this month, and apologies to poor May who got pushed out because of the delay in the patch. With these new ages that they've released, there have come to be a lot of inconsistencies with the lore and, you know, how the backstory of Overwatch essentially has built up over this period of time. Namely, one of the biggest controversies is Kiriko's age. Right now, they are saying that she is 21 years old. And as you all know from the Kiriko origin story that was released by Blizzard around her release, she actually grew up with Genji and Hanzo in Hanamura. I don't know if it was Hanamura to be precise, but she grew up with them, okay? You know, she was, you know, this young, theoretically, and then Genji and Hanzo over here. You can really take a look at it like, you know, you could probably say Kiriko is maybe around like 8 years old at the time. Then Genji's he's probably like, you know, a little bit older, like I would say young teens, maybe like right around there. And then Hanzo, being the oldest of the brother, he's probably like his late teens, but he's still not an adult yet. He still looks, you know, fairly into that younger age category. Now, when you take that into context and you go ahead and look at her age, which is 21 as of right now, and you look at Genji and Hanzo's age, Genji is 37 years old and Hanzo is 40 years old. So obviously right there you're seeing a big problem. That's almost like a 20-year age gap. At best, we could probably move Kiriko's age down to like 6 years old, but that still makes Hanzo like 25 and Genji like 22 at the time of this backstory, which I'm just gonna be honest, I'm 24. They don't look 22 or 25 to me. That just doesn't, you know, that doesn't really match up in like the whole grand aspect of things. And now I really think this is like quite a simple fix, because Genji and Hanzo's backstory doesn't really flow into Overwatch until after their big fight happens, which is, you know, when Hanzo is ordered by his parents to go, you know, kill his brother because of reasons. I don't know the specifics, but I'm just gonna do like a abridged version of this. And then he goes join Overwatch, and then it splits into like the start of his Overwatch story. What I think they could do is they could lower Hanzo and Genji's age down to fit more in line with Kiriko's age, because when you take a look at Kiriko in the game, 21 years old fits her personality pretty well based on like all the interactions that we have in game. You know, it just makes more sense. I mean, Genji being old kind of makes sense, it's all right, but Kiriko is definitely 21. Like if we aged Kiriko up to be like older, it kind of like, you know, you wouldn't think she'd be like acting that same way. So I think, as I was stating, I think the best option was this is because, or the best option for Kiriko, essentially it's tied in with Hanzo and Genji. So 10 years ago, roughly, it might be a little bit more or less now, given time has passed, but from the timeline I'm pulling from, about 10 years ago when the fight happens, Genji leaves, and at that time he would have been 27 and Hanzo would have been 30, because right now they are 37 and 40. So if we just take off like 10 years, you know, we make Hanzo 20 years old and we make Genji 17 years old at the time of the instance, I feel like that's still old enough theoretically to have a falling out between them. because they could still be trained from like an early age in a very sophisticated crime family. That, I mean, I could see that there. And I could already see their skills having like a strong foundation that when Genji, you know, goes into Blackwatch, he's still able to develop those skills over that period of time, as well as Hanzo living by himself with his essentially his crime family. And then at that time, at the time of that fight, Kiriko would be, you know, around 11 years old-ish. Still, you know, young, but not as drastic of a difference. So now if we go back and consider, like, what if during that origin story, Kiriko was like 8? That would make Genji about 14. That would make Hanzo about 17 years old, which I feel fit a lot closer to like the pictures in Kiriko origin story, but still match up with the events of Overwatch and Blackwatch. This still allows Kiriko to remain like the same character, keep her interactions that kind of feel more like brotherly, sisterly between at least Genji. And that's one way they could go about doing that. That would be like probably the best case scenario, because I don't think Genji or Hanzo really have much development in Overwatch until they join, and Genji joins in Blackwatch. That was just like 10 or 9 years ago that happened. Well, he can still be older, but not like super old, that it doesn't match up with Kiriko. I still feel like that fits, in my opinion. Now, there's another option where they could say, then, you know, they could probably explain Kiriko's age away with the Fox Spirit if they officially leaned more into magic. And that would be like the kind of like the easy way out, but it'd be a little bit hard to do that just considering the fact that, you know, we already have one time displaced character, which is Tracer. As they've stated before, Tracer still does age. So I'm not really sure how they would explain away Kiriko not aging, unless like the Fox Spirits, like, you know, stopped her from aging, and it's like definitively she's stuck at 21 years old. And then the Fox Spirit also keeps her like young and stuff like that. I don't really know too much about the lore of all the Japanese and the foxes, but just something to consider. The last option, of course, is aging Kiriko up, but I really, like I said, I really don't like that idea, because it, you know, you got 28 years old, like I'm 24. I don't feel like that would work very well with the current state of like her interactions. Like they'd have to re-record like a bunch of voice lines basically, in my opinion. I don't think they would fit anymore. Some people think, you know, like a 6-year-old Kiriko and like a 22-year-old Genji would still work, but I just, when I look at those pictures in the origin story and I look at the ages, I'm like, and then I think of like the interactions of like the bowl cut, sure, it kind of works, but it's not like really like connected, and it just feels a little bit weird, in my opinion. Another problem that they ran into, or that the community has picked up on here, is that Sojourn doesn't really match her age either. And the problem here is that Sojourn, like all the characters in the game, Sojourn has her own backstory. Right now, she's 47, as confirmed by Blizzard. The Omnic Crisis, you know, starting in the past 28 years or so ago, would make her around 19 at the age of the Omnic Crisis. There's this whole novel that has been written about Sojourn, and essentially, while they never give really like any dates, they do say that she was in the army about 4 years before she was promoted to captain and when the crisis started. And she spent her teenage years in and out of hospitals and got her first surgery to have cybernetics at 13. Which means, given all that context, if the Omnic Crisis starts at 19, and she joined 4 years ago at 15, and then cybernetics surgeries start at 13, you know, there's like kind of the issue between those. Now, I do want to say I did look up like the requirements for joining the Canadian military, and as of right now, you have to be at least 18 years old, although you can join at 17 years old with parental consent, but there are a couple of exceptions. For instance, for the paid education program, you can be 16 years old with parental consent, or for the primary reserves, you can be 16 years old and enrolled as a full-time student. Joining the army at 16 rather than 15 might work in that context, but then, you know, instantly promoted to captain, I don't really know how well that would fit. Also, given her being in and out of surgery, as a teenager that's still during like the teenager time. Again, not really sure how well that would work, but it is possible that she could have joined like the Canadian Army in some way with parental consent at a little bit of a younger age. However, I think for consistency's sake, giving Sojourn a little bit like of aged, but like just age her. It doesn't have to be a long time, just has to be like a few years, because it really isn't that bad, because she's not really connected to anybody besides Overwatch and the Canadian military. So just age her up a couple of years and then have her join Overwatch at a later date, and there's not really much of an issue there. Like everything with Sojourn can pretty much stay exactly the same, and you've just fixed that entirely. That's what Blizzard has to do. It makes me wonder if they have like explanations for these already set up, because if not, why release the birthdays? They either need to come out and say they are like retconning a birthday or a like an origin story or something like that to fix the inaccuracies, or go in and just fix the birthdays. Like I feel like you could fix the birthdays without affecting that much of a story. And you know, again, maybe I'm wrong. The game's been alive for a very long time. So there's been a lot of books, a lot of novels, a lot of comics, a whole bunch of lore written up on the characters. So maybe it's so intricate that, you know, even changing just a single date is going to mess things up. But when you present this to the player base, obviously people are going to get, you know, very upset about people's ages. It's definitely something that you could take a look at and try and, you know, like correct. I know some interactions in games aren't necessary. Like most interactions, all interactions, I'm pretty sure, aren't canon. But at the same time, if you're going to have interactions that references characters' backstories, theoretically, I'm going to see that as like a headcanon or like the same amount of canon as like anything else. So like that, just either remove the interactions or fix the backstory or something, so that can work together for all the characters. And then going forward, don't make the same mistakes. What there really should be is there should be like a giant folder that has all of the lore information, and then essentially something like a giant, probably like a web, or I'm not quite sure of the word I'm thinking here, but essentially something that lists out the events. So obviously we have the major events like Omnic Crisis, and then list out events that happen and mark their years off and attach them to that timeline, and then give characters date of births based on the timeline for all their events, and have each one tie in, so that way you know that if something like Genji and their brother fighting and Genji getting picked up by Blackwatch and integrated into Overwatch, you can kind of see where that connects. You can see that that is like a hard thing that has to be included in his story, so he has to be a certain age for that. And then you can kind of, you know, start basing like other characters that might have connections to that character, you can base their ages off of that connection as well, and kind of get that corrected too. It doesn't feel like that it's that hard. It's definitely going to take some hours to work out and figure out how to fix everything.